means when I do a recovery with this, that 30-foot strap is going to become a 40-foot strap, because it's going to build up all of that kinetic energy, and then it's going to pluck that vehicle.
You are your medical provider to some extent. Is that fair? Like if you're off the track?
Sure. I'm Don Chase. I live in Washington.
Because I'm probably blinking at every one of them.
This is George Bull. I'm with UnimogCenter.com, and we're at the Overland East Expo at the Showcase Vehicles booth, and you're watching Waypoint Overland.
All right. This is Tommy.
This is Jeannie.
And we're the Amazing Grace. And you are watching Waypoint Overland TV. Shameless plug.
Hi, I'm George Bull from UnimogCenter.com, and we're here at the Overland East Expo at the showcase area. And this is a Mercedes-Benz Unimog U1300L, and we're going to do a little demo and talk about it. So this is a 1990 Mercedes-Benz Unimog 1300L. Unimogs are pretty unique vehicles. There are some things about them that make them fundamentally different than most vehicles. The first thing to take into account is most of the vehicles here are on-road vehicles designed to have off-road capability. A Unimog is an off-road vehicle designed to have on-road capability. So a few of the things that you can see with the vehicle set up like this is that we have a lot of flex and movement between the cab and the back. This vehicle allows for a lot of articulation. Underneath the vehicle, we have portal axles, and the portal axles allow the vehicle to have more ground clearance than it would conventionally have. It has coil springs in all four corners, which is one reason why it's able to articulate like this. And it has torque tubes. And the torque tubes are long steel tubes that connect to the gearbox on one end and the axle on the other end, and the drive shaft goes through. There are two reasons for having that. One reason is that it protects the whole drivetrain. It keeps it water and dust and grit from entering. But the primary reason is it allows for the placement of the rear axle. So on a leaf-sprung vehicle, you have the axle bolted to the springs, and that's what holds the axle in place. On a traditional coil-sprung vehicle, you have trailing arms and linkages to keep the axle in place. But those trailing arms kind of have weird geometry at their extremes. The torque tube on this vehicle is what holds the axle in place. So you don't have a lot of suspension bushings. You don't have you have the simplicity in a lot of ways of a leaf suspension, but you have the capabilities of a coil suspension. So that's a really good, it's a good combination. So the combination of the torque tubes and the hubs and the coil springs, all of them combined, really give it the ability to do something like this. So a lot of vehicles here that are heavily modified can do what I've just done over here. However, This is a stock vehicle, and it's a camper, and I can drive over these. A lot of people can drive up onto them. I can drive over these any way I want, including putting these under the lowest part of the differential. And this truck will clear. These are a little less than 2 feet. They're approximately 22 inches high. So right now we're looking at 44 inches of axle articulation. It's not maxed out. You can see I can still move this. Again, this is a truck that, you know, is a 7,500 pound or 7,500 kilo GVW, but I can still move the suspension. It has a lot of travel, it has a lot of articulation, and it has a lot of flex. And the other advantage is, if you're building a back for these, this happens to be an ambulance back. It's a stock German Army ambulance back. But if you were to build a composite back or any other sort of back, since this is on its own suspension, none of the stress is transmitted to this box. So for example, the door just opens and it closes. Where a lot of other vehicles, you'd have a hard time opening the door, because if they could get to this level, they'd have so much tension in the body. Same with their camper back, it would probably be under a lot of tension and stress. There's no tension, there's no stress on the back, there's no tension on the cab. And the two are able to move independently of one another. So nothing is fighting anything. So this truck is not fighting the terrain it's on. So as you saw, I went up relatively easily. There was no drama, there's no spinning wheels. This truck normally is in 2-wheel drive, just with the rear wheels. It's shift on the fly to 4-wheel drive, and then shift on the fly to lock all the differentials. So when this came up, it had the 4 wheels differentials locked. And basically, it's as a stock vehicle, it does more than what most built vehicles will do. And the nice thing is having the reliability and engineering of Mercedes. There's no unintended consequences with doing modifications, things that you don't realize. You don't have, you don't have to mess with this vehicle for the off-road capability. It's all basically been taken care of. And you can focus on making a nice back for it, and you can focus on making a good habitat and living area to meet your needs, and not worry about kind of what you're going to do if you have to go off-road. These vehicles are extremely reliable. This particular one has an 8-speed gearbox with 8 speeds forward, 4 speeds reverse. It's got air over hydraulic brakes, disc brakes, it's power steering, power brakes. People always ask me, what kind of gas mileage does it get? Coming down here from New Hampshire, I got 11 miles to the gallon on the highway. If I'm going more like 45, 55 miles an hour, I'm going to get more like 15 miles to the gallon. If it's really heavy sand and you're working the truck really hard under a heavy load, it's more like 8 or 9 miles to the gallon. The top speed on it and the top cruising speed on this vehicle is a tad under 65 miles an hour. So I normally drive it at around 100 kilometers an hour, which is about 61, 62 miles an hour. It doesn't really like going faster than that, but it's possible to put overdrives on these and do things to get it a friendlier highway speed. But normally this vehicle is a 65 mile an hour vehicle. Even if you can theoretically go faster in it, the tires are rated for 100 kilometers an hour, the brakes are kind of rated for 100 kilometers an hour. So realistically with a Unimog, 65 is your kind of realistic top speed. They're great vehicles for people that want to go and explore and access areas that are really difficult to get to. However, if you're the type of person who absolutely has to have air conditioning and you want to get into a truck and all you want to do is put on the cruise control, turn on the radio, put the airco on and turn your brain off and drive at 75, 80 miles an hour, this isn't the truck for you, because you have to, it takes some awareness to drive this. It's not particularly loud, it's comfortable. I can drive it with just one finger on the steering wheel, but likewise you have to be engaged. It's a piece of machinery that you have to kind of communicate with when you're driving, so you can't just turn your brain off and take it easy. But once you get it off-road, then it totally pays for itself, and it makes it totally worthwhile. And so generally, if you're the type of person who's going to do a lot of rugged off-roading and then some stuff that's tough and technical, this is going to be great. But also, a lot of people come up to me and they say, George, you know, it's a funky vehicle. It's really cool that you can go up on these ramps, and I'm sure you can go to all kind of crazy places and go off-road. And they'll say, but you know, that's not really my deal. You know, I just want to go out on forestry roads and I want to do stuff like that. When you're using an overland vehicle, you never want to get to 100% of its off-road capability. You want to get, if you want to stay kind of 50%, maybe go up to 60%, because you're probably going to be in a remote area. You're probably not going to necessarily have the, you know, telephone, phone, emergency services. So you obviously don't want to be pushing your vehicle to an extreme. So this truck at 50%, so I'm just pushing it about 50%, would be pushing like a pickup truck with a bed on it. It would be 100%. They might be able to go where I'm going, but they have to worry about vehicle damage. They have to worry about really getting stuck or hitting rocks and banging out oil pans. So even though they might be able to make it, they need to be spotted. It gets stressful. And I can come in and I can just walk over it, and I don't have to worry about that. I rarely take if I'm overlanding, the only time I would ever get this vehicle up to 80 or 90% of its capacity is because I made some sort of mistake. But what is nice is that, like, you'll get to like a forestry road where maybe it's washed out, and it might be interesting to go beyond it, but likewise people are kind of like, oh, it looks a little risky, I think I'm just going to turn around now and go back. I can just go right through it, and usually I'm not going to see anybody else because everybody else opted to turn around. There are areas in Moab where I'll go where there's some technical off-roading in the beginning, and then the road goes on for another 10 miles. Most of the Jeep guys just want to do the technical climb, and then they turn around, they go back, and they go somewhere else. I do the technical climb, I keep going, and I know I'm most likely not going to see anybody else. So I'm not trying to do the extreme stuff. I'm not trying to like prove how cool my truck is or how big my tires are. But likewise, it does open up a lot of options, and it really gives you a safety margin when you're going on challenging terrain, that you don't have to worry as much about damaging yourself or your vehicle. So that's what I tell people. But having said that, it's not for everybody, because if that's not the type of thing you want to do in the first place, then this isn't really the type of vehicle you want. Using it abroad, I've driven these in Africa, I've driven these across the Kalahari Desert, in Kenya, South Africa, Namibia. They're great, they're very reliable. Mercedes parts are available worldwide. Ironically, the hardest place to get parts for these is in the United States. So that's not an issue. They're designed to go on bad roads. They're designed to be constantly used off-road. Not that you have to do it that way, but definitely, as I said, the suspension doesn't have lots of bushings. Everything is extremely heavy-duty. It's extremely rugged, so I don't worry about stuff like that when I'm in Africa. I've got just enough room. I'm in a size category where I can usually go anywhere where a Land Cruiser can go. It's big enough to give me a lot of living space, but it's just small enough. I've got a tighter turning radius than a long wheelbase Land Cruiser. I have about the same as a Jeep, you know, Unlimited, a JKU or JLU. So this may look big, but this vehicle is extremely nimble. I can go down trails and I can make the turn, and the guy in the JKU has to stop and he has to do a 3-point turn. Also, I can fit in a standard parking spot at like a supermarket or something. I literally use every inch of that spot, but it fits in that spot. So that makes this vehicle a really good vehicle in terms of size. It has a lot of the advantages of the bigger trucks without being, and when I mean bigger trucks, I mean like LMTVs and MANs and Mercedes. I've got that heavy duty ruggedness and to a degree that amount of space, but I can also poke around on smaller trails that you would use in a Jeep or like a Land Cruiser. And these come in all kind of configurations. So this one's an ambulance. A lot of them come with flatbeds. A lot of vehicles that I bring in are fire engines that have utility backs. So if you wanted, for example, a fire engine, you know, you'd probably take the utility back off of it. But there are a lot of different variations in backs. These also come in double cabs, which are kind of hard to find, but there are a lot of different. They come with PTO, sometimes hydraulics, but for an Overlander, you can usually go with a real basic Army surplus or a fire engine surplus vehicle. Will have everything you need, and the two things to take into account are the newer ones. This is a 1990, which makes it newer for what's available to us in America. Are high-speed ring and pinions and turbocharged engines. They're not a necessity. I've gone overlanding with standard axles and a non-turbocharged engine, but you're going to be limited to about a little less than 55 miles an hour. Whereas when you work up into the high-speed axles and the turbocharged engine, you're closer to 65, and you can feel the difference in the power. But basically, you've got engine variations. There's all kind of stuff. So if you're interested in Unimogs, it's really worth spending some time researching them, researching different options, and getting around some of the terminology. Because the term Unimog is like the term Jeep. It can apply. There are Unimogs that are just slightly larger than an ATV, and there are Unimogs that are much bigger than this. So the term Unimog is a very general, loose term. These square cab ones, which I find to be the best kind of balance between overlandability, reliability, and usability, these are often called SBU Unimogs. That's a very general term. It covers a lot of vehicles. But if you're talking about an SBU Unimog, it's going to look a lot like this. And that's, as an overland vehicle, I'm a Land Rover person as well, so I've used Land Rovers, I've used larger Mercedes trucks, and at the end of the day, this is what's worked best for me. Everybody has their different priorities, but this size and this capability gives me the widest range of access with a reasonable amount of comfort. So again, you know, I know guys that go in way bigger trucks than me, and they just think this is way too small, and I hang out with people in Land Rovers and they're like, that's way too big, and to each their own. But I've found that these can access just about anywhere that any other vehicle can do, and they can do it reliably. So I think that they're definitely one of the vehicles you have to consider if you're going to do extended overlanding, especially international overlanding. May not turn out to be what you need or want, but it's definitely something to consider.
Hi, my name's Mark Collins. I'm with American Adventurist. We're in the SP15 booth here across from the Land Rover display. American Adventurist is an online forum. We promote the fun side of vehicle activity. We encourage people to get outside, use their equipment, explore the country, explore the natural parts of what the states have to offer in a respectful and proper way, leaving the land better than they came from. We try to help each other out with builds and equipment and mods to our vehicles so we all don't make mistakes. We're very low-key. We don't take ourselves seriously. We look forward to have fun. We encourage people to get out of their vehicles, strap on a pair of hiking boots, to paddle a river, to go caving, to go climb a mountain, and to enjoy the world other than just outside of their windows. We do 3 community events per year, 2 in California. One's the Desert Rendezvous, and the other one's the Mountain Rendezvous. We do one here in the east called the Appalachian Rendezvous in the Hardy National Forest. The Desert Rendezvous, we do trash cleanup on BML land. And Mountain Rendezvous, we help support the Boy Scout camp out there. Appalachian Rendezvous supports the El Dorado community in that area. Over the years, we've helped build up the community center, and we currently are supporting the search and rescue team. We make no money at this. There's a $40 charge for our events per vehicle. The money goes to pay our overhead for supplies, portable johns, and stuff. Everything else goes back to the community. We're not trying to profit to it. We're just trying to encourage a community get-togethers, that people to get together, find groups to go and explore with, and have a good time.